Welcome to the American Made and Paid Show, the home of free speech and independent thought.
The big story is freedom of speech is really in trouble. The far left knows that at any time they can call for a sponsor boycott of anyone they despise.
It is right here, right now, where you'll get your weekly dose of unfiltered truth.
It's non-negotiable. Pre-existing conditions will be protected. This president has said this as a candidate.
Insight.
Very few people I know could have handled it. We can never, ever let this happen to another president again.
And information that challenges the American way of life.
Welcome, everybody, to the American Made and Paid Show. Zach here, back with Professor Dreg. Hope you guys have all had a good weekend. Professor Dreg was actually in Los Angeles the last couple of days of the week, which is why we couldn't do the show last week. But before we jump into it, you want to enlighten the audience on what you were up to?
No, I mean, LA sucks. No, it's just nothing special, just things that we had to take care of. But yeah, it's because we are working on a couple of big things. So, can't really talk about it at this point. But in LA, I did hear, and I don't know how they get away with it because I'm still under the impression that all of this stuff is protected through protective orders. So a lot of these, civil matters, they have protective orders. So that means you can't really talk. Well, you can't talk about it in the public or the media. I guess this is considered the media. Even though this is small, this would still be considered if somebody caught wind, we'd get in trouble. But on that note, there was this, in LA, I forgot the name of the show. Somebody, they were just talking about, he was saying the name of the plaintiff, some guy named Rodriguez, and he was complaining to OSHA about this and that. But the dude is horrible. I don't know how he has his own radio show.
Yeah.
He was just basically making jokes, and there was no legal information about anything. So he had expert witnesses on, or I didn't hear any, but he supposedly had expert witnesses on, and I listened to the dude for an hour, and he gave out no information. They were just telling jokes, and I'm thinking, who wants an attorney who just tells jokes? You want to hear, your legal theories and how you're going to win. Because this is what makes the counselor very successful. You have to approach the law. Like when you approach the law, there's only one thing that matters, and that's your client's point of view. You don't argue your point of view. You don't argue anybody's point of view except for the client. You represent the client.
Even if you don't believe in his stance or his presence and he hired you. But then it's like, why would you take on the case, right? So
yeah, exactly. No, but and here we go. We're going to start early. But that's the, understanding Christianity actually helps me understand to do that. You know what I mean?
How so? Give me an example. Well, this show, I think people are already used to it. I think at this point it's twisted into how everything flows from Christianity, whether it be politics, business, or sociology.
But it works on the law. Because the most effective attorneys, I don't care who it is. I think everybody knows the OJ case, right? OJ Simpson, gosh darn it.
Rob Kardashian.
He murdered 2 people.
Yeah.
But his attorneys got him off. And how did they do it? Because they argued from OJ's point of view. And,
It's all about a system of checks and balances and what you can and cannot prove, right? And that's unfortunately why sometimes even if somebody is clearly in the wrong, like I heard this really funny example in a movie called Liar Liar with Jim Carrey.
Yeah. Okay, I know that movie.
So this illustrates it really perfectly, where that lady Greta, his secretary, and I'm sure people have seen this movie. I haven't seen this movie in years, but there was a distinctive scene because he couldn't lie. He had to tell the truth, and this is perfect because there's one point where she goes, like in our system, it's like flawed or whatever, and I'm leaving, and it's like, a neighbor of mine, like a thief, broke into somebody's house but hurt himself in that person's house, and then the person had to pay the thief to get his bone fixed, even though he broke into his house.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught that, but it was
No, I know
you see
that.
what I'm saying? So it's like this guy should have been busted for breaking into somebody's house, but because he broke his leg like on the job, or I don't know, remember the story exactly. Like he like basically like fell and hurt himself.
Yeah, he
The
slept
person,
and fell.
the person whose house he broke into had to pay him because he sued her.
Yeah,
But he
and that was her employee's friend of an employee. Like
yeah. But you see how that's messed up? Because it doesn't matter if you're in the wrong or the right. It just matters on what lawyer you get and if they can get.
Yeah.
And that's why Jim Carrey's character was so good at what he does, is because he could lie on behalf of the client.
Yeah.
You know, that
That's
client
why it
that he
was
had
fun.
to, and that relates to your story, because when you told the story, it reminded me, it's like his client was that, like, you know, that broad that had slept with like 7 different men. And the husband was clearly like a good guy with kids, right? And, you know, that's kind of just shows you how it works with lawyers.
Yeah, and he was able to get around it by figuring out that she was a minor when she entered the contract and da. Yeah, I actually like that.
That movie's hilarious.
Yeah, it's actually kind of sad too, you know, when he realizes he was a bad dad. I was like, oh, I like Liar. That was good. But
It's
going
true,
back,
though. Yeah.
well, see, but here's the thing, the real, because I know Liar, like that one thing about, you know, like, yeah, it's so bad that a thief could actually sue and make money off of you. So, and that's sad. But the reason why it's hard to get judgment calls and stuff like that is because we're not supposed to be judging people. That's not our job. Our job is not to, you know, like, just as regular humans, we're not supposed to judge. We're never supposed to say, you know, judge anybody. That's just not what we do. But what we should be doing is showing love to others. You know what I mean? And then that's, you know, and like in the streets, they go, yeah, I got love for my people. I got love for this. I got nothing but love and this and that. And, but there's a lot of truth to that, but they just don't understand what that word love means.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because without Jesus, they're honestly, without, and you hate to say this, but it's the truth. If you don't know Jesus, there is no love at all. And there's big, huge populations on the planet that are loveless, void of any type of love. They're incapable of doing it. Why? Because they're always going to be trapped in that carnal mindset, and their entire society is ruled that way, which is basically our society at this point in time.
Also, after we kind of fell away from Christianity, if you think about it, we invented problems that we didn't have before. And what do I mean by this? Well, you know how you talk about loveless societies, right? Things like mental illness, like depression and anxiety and all that. And I'm not going to spur this into an episode where we talk about, oh, mental illness is demonic possession. I mean, to some degree it could be, but here's the deal. We started to exhibit more illnesses, both physical and mental ailments, because we fell away from Christianity. And it's really funny and interesting that as a result, then we created more industries like pharmaceuticals and whatnot to alleviate problems that we started to have for actions that we had done. See, the funny thing is I listened to a podcast by a guy who wasn't even a Christian, but he was talking about like why things happen, right? Romans is nothing but cause and effect. It's not God making bad things happen. It's just that there's a simple cause and effect. Like take our first world society as a problem, right? People talk about obesity being a disease. Obesity is a problem when it's really just cause and effect of you ate too much, or maybe you're more susceptible to insulin and you got fat, or people blaming the government for being 200 grand in debt, but you made those decisions. And it's really that simple, that if people stuck to their values and over generations didn't do things like promiscuity or whatnot, you wouldn't have STIs. Dude, STIs are a recent phenomenon. They're not, it's not like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, back in the,
it was funny.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. You know, because like two things, what you said made me think of this. Some person was arguing with me about diseases, and like the 10 most, you know, contagious diseases on the planet, da 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 da. All this stuff about being, you know, some form of genetic mutations and all this other stuff. And I was like, yeah, I said, that's BS. I said, the bulk of it is just STDs, including tuberculosis. You know, how are you going to get tuberculosis or anything? Usually it's because you're having dirty sex with somebody infected. And that's how you get it. That's because you're exposing yourself to somebody. And then, but in reality, you know, it's just exposure to those types of people. You know what I mean? And it's like, whether you're walking by them or whatever, but, you know, diseases like malaria. How does one get malaria? Well, you got to go to Africa, and just going to Africa is not enough. Somehow, some way, you got to get so close to somebody, they're able to give it to you. So
it's through a blood transfusion, right? You got to break the skin and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, or just let them spit in your face, and you know what I mean?
Sure, bodily fluids absorbed.
Yeah, so and that's the whole point. It's like, but people don't want to say it, you know, because it sounds racist. It's like, well, because a lot of those diseases aren't here. You know, they're just not. And usually it happens to people who go out and date hookers. And it's just a reality. Almost all of our diseases can be linked to lifestyle choice. And a big part of lifestyle choice is how you have sex. So, you know, yeah, I just don't buy any of that. Like,
but do you get what I'm trying to say though, and how I'm tying this to like?
Oh no, that's exactly why I'm saying it, because you're right. See, because every disease we have is a lifestyle disease. Think about this, and this doesn't come from me. Dr. Laura Schlesinger was the one that said this decades ago.
Woo!
How many fat people came out of the concentration camps? Seriously, how many of them were fat?
None.
Zero fat people came out of the concentration camp. So that should tell you something about, you know, overeating and obesity. You know what I mean? They weren't eating. There was no fat Jews coming out of there. There's no, you know, how come there wasn't a chubby one or a thick one or you know, or just a regular lean muscular Jew coming out of there? If he has obesity problems, he would have came out as a lean dude.
Right.
None of them came out that way. They all came out sticks and bones.
Emaciated, yeah.
Yeah, all of them. All of them. So you got proof right there. What more proof do you need? You know what I mean? Do you have to go to other famine-stricken regions? How many fat dudes are coming out of Ethiopia when there was that the famine in Ethiopia way back in the 80s? You know, how many fat dudes were coming out of Ethiopia then? In reality, how many fat Ethiopians do you know today? You know, they're still hungry.
Well, the thing is, because in Western culture, right, and this is going to segue a little bit, the reason why is because we have a very heavy carb-centric diet, which was all because of the fact that there was lobbyists with the Department of Agriculture incentivizing farmers to produce stuff like corn, stuff like, you know, things that they could feed their cows with and get ethanol and making the carbs the bottom of the food pyramid, when you do need carbs. I'm not a keto crazy guy, but like you shouldn't eat too many carbs because they make you fat. Like carbs, like that's what spikes your insulin. We all know that. I don't want to turn this into a health show, but what I'm trying to say is a lot of the problems we have, we created. God didn't give us AIDS or HIV. Like that's just the result of poor decision making is really what it is. Like STIs that come when you get gonorrhea, it's not It's not what. And here's the thing also about consequence, because the guy on the podcast who wasn't even religious said the same thing. You know, it was a secular guy, and he said that, well, then on the contrary, it is also what you see too, because like oh, I think I froze for a second there. Did you get me?
Yeah, I got you. Well, I didn't hear, but I know what you're saying.
Well, what
it was only 1 second pause.
Oh, okay. So what I was saying was, like, the contrary is also the truth, in that if you practice these principles, what people don't understand is that if you don't do certain things, you know, the whole law of attraction thing is a popular thing. Like, if you believe it, then it must be true and everything. In a weird way, that's a perverse kind of like reverse standpoint of Christianity, but it's kind of true. Like, if you are somebody who lives by your own virtues and you don't engage in premarital sex or whatnot and everything, the reward is that is what? A long-term relationship that's stable. Like, really, like, you are statistically more likely to stay with one person your whole life if you're not promiscuous. That's not judgment, and that's not, oh, well, what happens if I'm tatted up and used up? Well, that's decision making. That's not, and the thing is, even though I heard this too, like, God may forgive and say, like, for example, girls who've been like around the block and men don't want to marry them anymore, the excuse they make is, well, God, but God does forgive, but it doesn't mean men have to. It doesn't mean men have to take that on and deal with it, right? Because a lot of women are complaining, like, when they end up in the church and they're like single.
Well, but I'm telling you, that point is a great segue to that Amber Geyer situation.
Yes, Amber Geyer. That's somebody sent in an article. Thank you. Let me just shout that person out. Thank you, Hot Girl, for sending in some content. Really appreciate you listening to the American Maiden Page Show. But yeah, Amber Geyer was somebody I wanted to talk about a little bit more.
Well, no, but we can save it for tomorrow. But what you said just right now is identical to Amber Geyer, but in the opposite way, like in a parallel universe,
right?
Because and we spoke about this before too, because it kind of gets into simping and gold diggers. What you said, does a prostitute or a hooker girl, because to me they're all the same. I don't care if you're a real streetwalker or a sugar baby,
right?
Or a gold digger. You guys are nothing more than prostitutes. Seriously. Right. You guys are prostitutes. They're prostituting. I don't care how you cover it. But do those women honestly deserve a second chance? And but here's the thing.
But go ahead, because I have a point.
Yeah. Okay. So my thing is, it's always gonna be yes. Always gonna be yes, because it's the same thing with me. I am a male version of a hooker. And it's like, do I deserve any type of, redemption or people's, not forgiveness, but, like a second chance? Or should I be judged? Like, if I walk into court, if I walk into anywhere, should people judge me based on my past? And the answer is always going to be no.
Right.
Because even if I was doing it, see, that was the whole thing. Because you're the one that told me the story about the dude on the cross being a thief, and then he went to heaven. He wasn't judged. All he had to do was believe in Jesus. That was it. Right. And he's in heaven.
Right.
And he wasn't judged based on his criminal behavior. So if I was still engaging in criminal acts and I was representing somebody, should I be judged? And the answer will always be no. And that's what makes this Amber. Well, maybe we'll save this for tomorrow, but it's a good tight. Does that cop, Amber Geyer, does she have the right to be forgiven, or should she be punished? But yeah, we'll say that for tomorrow.
But see, so that we'll talk about that tomorrow. But on the point about, for example, I'll give you the context as to what I was listening to. Right?
Yeah.
There was a so-called Christian woman. And don't get me wrong, like I say this because we have to acknowledge the truth for what it is. Sometimes women in the church and women that aren't in the church, they're no different from each other. And I think that people who are reasonable may know that, because the way you determine is through people's actions, right? But when you have women who are godly and women who, try to be because they, they're in the church and whatnot, you can't really just bank on what they say. You got to see what they're doing. So this girl was getting all bent out of shape because there was an article that was written about how men prefer debt-free virgins without tattoos. In a simple, it's a great article actually. In short, it's true. I think at the bottom of our hearts, I think, prejudice aside, that's what we want. We want the submissive, debt-free virgin without tattoos and everything. Because, a guy I know said it really best. It's like tattoos on a woman is like putting, bumper stickers on a Ferrari. It's just like, women are beautiful. Like, why would you do that? Anyways, but that's besides the point. What I'm trying to get at is that even if, and this goes for me too, even if I know I've screwed up in my past, right, in this area, whether it's like you used to be sexually promiscuous or whatnot, God forgives you, but there are still consequences on this planet for your actions. Physical consequences. Like, for example, if you get AIDS, right? For worst case scenario, I'm not pinning that on anyone, but worst case scenario, you get an STI. You're forgiven. But the thing is, God forgives you spiritually, but the thing is, there are still consequences for your actions, right? Just like you, right? Like, you've been forgiven, but you still get angry. Like, there are still things you have to work on. The problem here is when people say, well, I'm forgiven, as an excuse to just kind of go out and still sleep around and still be a hooker. Because there are women like that, where it's just like, they say, well, they call it what it was like a presumptuous sinner or whatnot, right? It's like, well, I know I'm going to, sin anyway, so I might as well just go and still do things. But there are physical consequences for that manifest cause and effect in ways that you don't see yet. Like, for example, if you wonder why guys don't want to marry you, like, your actions are going to speak for themselves.
Yeah, well, see,
because you're going to be neurotic, you're going to be all entitled and everything.
Yeah, but see, like, there's a fundamental flaw in that thinking. Any woman who's I
don't mean all women. I was just saying like in a context of this.
Yeah, and for that article. So here's her flaw in her thinking. Well, there's a lot of flaws in everybody's thinking, but in this one, because this whole thing is just so bizarre. But here's the thing. Any woman who goes to church looking for a husband, that's wrong. You don't go to church to go look for husbands. Or you don't go on dates looking for husbands. You don't. You just don't. You have to. This is the bizarre thing that people, they don't teach this because people really don't understand Romans, right? So based on Romans, you don't go looking for husbands. You don't, because nobody's a mind reader, or else it would have said someone. No, seriously, it's the fact. That whole thing about reading minds, and that's all. If anybody can do that, I guarantee you they're some kind of demonic freak. Seriously. Because that is a special talent or gift if you know how to somehow, some way materialize energy into real mass.
Sure.
And so that's not, no way. That's impossible. You are not a radio that could somehow, translate waves into something that we can understand. It's impossible. And probably only God could do something like that. But anyway, so because nobody's a mind reader, you can't go on dates specifically to make a person into your husband. That's not how it works.
Yes.
Because
that's right.
When you find a wife, it is through just everyday natural things. You're going shopping, something happens, you meet somebody. You're going to church, and then out
to seek God first, right?
Yeah. And then you see somebody, and then you guys start talking. Or maybe you're out at a restaurant, you see somebody, say, hey, look, da 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 da. But all of these people who use dating websites and things like that, it's just another way to get taken advantage of. So all those people need to stop looking, because you have to have, and I know this is really hard to swallow, but people have to just trust that there's Christian out there, and you will see that, you'll understand, you'll see a Christian when you see one. If you're a Christian, you will see another Christian. You will always see that person. Why? Because you will see that that person loves themselves, and you will see that they will have the ability to love others. And if you don't see that in another person, stay away. What's a tattoo? A tattoo is a sign that you really don't like yourself. It is. It's not that. But here's the other thing. For all the men who don't like tattoos, or like whoever answered that stupid poll, those aren't Christians. And I'll tell you why. Because it's a judgment. Because we don't know what's inside someone's heart. Me personally, I never got a tattoo. Why? Because I've always known what tattoos were. Tattoos were something that weak-minded people got because they wanted to fit in. It's just like drinking or doing drugs. It's something people do so they could alter their state of thinking, so they can participate in whatever societal norm that they need to participate in. That's what a tattoo is. It's the same thing as drinking. It's the same thing as smoking. All of that crap is just stuff that we don't need. It's because this is really interesting. And I'm not the only one saying this, but our country isn't suffering from white supremacy or black supremacy. We are, and you just said it, we're having trouble we're in trouble because we're not Christian people. So then what are we? What's America? America is a country filled with supremacists. Everybody's a supremacist. They're the best. What's Donald Trump? Is he a white supremacist? No, he's just a supremacist.
Well, best in his own mind at what he does.
Yeah, but look, I mean, he could back it. So is he a narcissist? No. Because to be a narcissist, you have to be failing at life. Some people can be considered a supremacist or a narcissist and get away with it. Trump has been successful. He's the president of the United States. He's meeting with other presidents of other countries. So he has a right to be a supremacist because he's at the top. But what about other people who are supremacists for no gosh darn reason? And that's what we're dealing with. We are dealing with the country of supremacists and no Christians. Christian people will never be supremacists. Never. But yet, somehow, some way, those dudes took a poll and they acted like a bunch of supremacists, judging women. It's like, if you have debt. Look, if I got money, and because here's the thing, in my mind, I don't know if this is true or not, because I'm 50 and I never had a girlfriend until the counselor. You know what I mean? Now we're gonna get married and whatever. So you know what I mean? So, but because of I don't want to say I'm super smart, but I am, and because of my intelligence and my ability to think logically, and now that I understand Christianity, this is how dating should be. You're living your life. God puts a series of situations in your life because he created this universe. So because he created this universe, he created a natural way of things to work.
Right.
And during that process of the universe working, nature's laws, you should be working. You should be interacting with other people. And when you're building a life based on what Jesus says, not so much, you can't go by what the it has to be based on New Testament philosophies, what Jesus was talking about, because the Old Testament was whack. And God admitted it. That's why he sent Jesus.
No, it's not whack, but
it's whack. There's a lot of things in the Old Testament that's really whack. And that's because look, is there a lot of good things? Yeah, of course. The science, the history, But there's a lot of things Jews don't get.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why those Jews have been suffering and they're going to continue to suffer. And they will always suffer until they understand the New Testament. They have to.
Well, I think they understand it, but they don't accept it is the thing. They don't fully accept it. Man, my internet.
You got to repeat that. Repeat that.
Sorry, I said they don't fully It's like the internet cuts out at the time I have to give.
I know, man.
It's they don't fully accept it is the thing. It's not that they don't understand it. It's they don't accept it.
Well, see, but that's the thing. Why don't they accept it? Same reason I didn't accept it. Nobody understands Romans. It is not taught. Because the Jewish people, when you go back to the Tower of Babel, they always took that tech to make themselves a bunch of supremacists. All of them. Jewish people are very guilty of being supremacists. You know, they're the top lawyers. They're you pick an industry, and it's the Jewish people who are on top of that industry. It's just how it works. Why? Because they're supremacists. They don't believe in that loving others. They're very good at loving themselves, but it's a love that makes them supremacists, which is probably why Trump's kid became a Jew. You know what I mean? Because Trump might be a Christian, but guess what? The daughter became a Jew.
It's true.
And it's part of that supremacist mentality. If you are a supremacist, it sucks. Because, and I'm guilty of it too, because I was so smart coming up with all of these things and doing all these great things, you know, working on all these projects and things like that. It's insane how you honestly believe that you are God.
Yeah.
I can create this. Oh, I created it. What did I create? I created some math formulas that helped, cure asthma. That's a great accomplishment. Very few people can say that. Very few people can say that. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, Jews have been very good at inventing things. I'm trying to think, is Tom a Jew? But I shouldn't say names, but but it was his idea. You know what I mean? And the thing is, he's also like the head of Department of Emergency, prominent hospital here in the Bay. And the thing is, it wasn't his math. It was his idea. And, he works with certain things all the time. So, but my point is, the Jewish people have that supremacist mentality. Without Christ, everybody has a supremacist mentality, which is why Black people to this day have it now. In the old days, Black people used to be humble. And think about this,
that's a good point, actually.
Going back to what you were saying before we hit the airwaves, the people you sell to. Yeah. See, because I like to use Jews and Blacks as perfect examples because they're like on the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah. So a Black person in the 1800s, they were humble. Even when they had all the money in the world. Think about this. You cannot, and I said this many times on the show. We said this many times on the show. How rich do you have to be as a society, as a culture? I know. She likes seeing you. But anyway, how successful do you have to be in the 1800s to produce female millionaires? And this is what people don't get. If it was so bad for Blacks, how come there were no white female millionaires back in the 1800s? None. Because they were the ones struggling at that time of society.
And we talked about Black Wall Street. We talked about Florida A&M. We talked about Texas A&M.
But what did they have? They had Christianity. And they weren't supremacists because they had Christianity. As soon as they lost Christianity, they like all the Blacks now, Puff Daddy, Kanye West, all of these people are supremacists. They might not be racist supremacists, but just like Donald Trump's a supremacist. not Kanye West, Sean Puff Daddy Combs from Revolt TV. He's a supremacist because only his opinion matters. Nobody else matters. If you don't, and here's what both of them, they're both identical. What does Donald Trump want from his people? His number one thing. If you want to work for Donald Trump, he don't care about anything except for loyalty. If you don't give him your loyalty, he does not care.
Mm-hmm.
He does not, and that's what supremacists do. They want loyalty, just like in a mob movie. You know, seriously, think about that. What Sean Puff Daddy Combs, you know that thing with Killer Mike and Candace Owens?
Yeah.
Candace Owens wasn't even originally invited to speak. She wasn't. She was a fill-in.
Oh.
And yeah, she wasn't invited to speak, but some other girls dropped out. They couldn't make it. And so they brought Candace Owens as a last-minute thing. And so she did it. And but anyway, but the point is, Sean Puff Daddy Combs only had people on that panel based on loyalty and nothing else. It wasn't based on opinions. It wasn't based on anything. That's probably why she shut it up a lot. She wasn't like herself because she gave her loyalty to Sean Puff Daddy Combs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I know she's not a real Christian, because why? She's not loyal to God or Jesus. She's loyal to men. And that's why she will never, like, half the things she says is pretty good and the other half is just garbage because she's not a Christian woman. She's not. And she gives her loyalty to people. See, me, you know, I don't give my loyalty. I never have, because I was a supremacist. Now I give my loyalty to Jesus. Seriously. If it's not something for coming from Romans or the first or second commandment, because now that's how I see everything. I base everything on first and second commandment and then Romans. Seriously. And if I see somebody who doesn't love themselves, I won't even fuck with them. I'm like, get out of here. You know what I mean? I was like, you know, but that's how you do it. That's how you live life. That's like, you know, it took me like 15 minutes to say it, but that's how you live your life. Yeah. Like that poll, somebody should have said, man, get the fuck out of here with that stupid ass poll. I don't want to hear that. I'm not going to be judging people I see at church or whatever because they got a tattoo or they got debt. I don't know them. How would I, you know what I mean? So it's like when I hear a poll like that, I'm like, I'll discount that. I don't even care. But in my personal life, if I'm working with somebody, like, you know, like with the counselor, you know, we were working together. I was hired by a very powerful man to work with the counselor. So, you know, and when I went into it, I was like, damn, she's hot. You know what I mean? So it's like, but through some miracle of God, somehow, some way, I looked at her in a way that a Christian will look at a woman. I don't know why, but for some reason, that's what happened. And maybe because Wendy, the counselor, you just prays a lot, I guess. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know, because I don't really know enough about how prayers work. but the point being is, you know what I mean? It's you're supposed to work with people, and when you're working with people, when you get to know them, then you get those feelings like, hey, you know what? We can make a family together. We can get married. We should do this. We should do that. You know, because that's how it works. That's how you don't date because you see some hot person on the internet. It's like, hey, I'm going to make contact because I think she's hot. That's not how it works, because just by chance, the counselor's hot. But if she would have been ugly and the same person, we would have ended up together.
Interesting.
That's how life works. Because normally I don't work with women. I just don't. You know, and you know, and it has nothing to do with anything, but
no, I know. It's the nature of your job and your line of work.
Yeah, because it's the truth. I mean, look, I don't care. I know these movies and Captain Marvel, they make women seem like they're so strong and powerful, but man, look, I don't work out. I'm an old man. but on any given day, I could slap on 550 on my back and lift it with one leg on my toes 20 times, either leg. No woman can do that. No woman. You know what I mean? That's what men do.
Right.
That's a man thing. You know what I mean? That's not, women don't do this. So look, for my work, and you know, we represented a cop, and this cop was such a woman. And I'm like, dude, I said, man, you know, I would never work with a woman.
Well, we
because
talked
she's not going to protect me. I don't want people shooting at everybody.
Well,
you know what I mean? Because she might shoot me.
But we talked about this a long time ago too, about how I don't think women should be cops in the first place. It's a dangerous job.
No, but that's why it's hard to meet women. It really is, without being a horn dog. You know what I mean? Because what do men and women really have in common? You know, so where do you meet women? See, that's a real thing. That's a
tough question. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do we meet them? You know, beyond shopping. I mean, you know, and it's just like
you can't. Here's the thing I've learned too, and I've accepted this because I used to think like that. I used to be like, oh, I'd find some girl at church, right? But see, if you're going into it with that intention, that's a surefire way to make sure nothing happens. It has to be you were just doing your thing, and they just happen to come in and compliment your life. That's actually how it works. And you know what? That's how God intended it.
Yeah, no, but you know what's funny too? If you go to church just to pick up on women, I think women can tell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they can smell it a mile away, and then you're just going to church, wasting time, getting angry, hating God because, you know, it's not what you want it to be. But unfortunately, a lot of churches do that too. They, you know, like everybody's all, I mean, because you should dress up. I believe in dressing up because it shows.
You should, yeah. I should do that more.
Well, you know, because it's not just respect for yourself, but it shows respect for others. That's why you dress up in court. All the attorneys are always in suits, business suits or something, because it shows respect to the court. And you should, I mean, if we're showing respect to a man by dressing up, then shouldn't we show respect to God? You know what I mean? I mean, does God care? No, but we should show him some respect. So just always give your best to God. And that's what I learned that from my, you know, Christian teammates.
Yeah.
When I was running track, they always said we do our best out of respect for God. We don't do it for ourselves to win these. Because, you know, like I told you 100 times, we never lost. 2 years, we never lost. But they always prayed for others because for God, we do our best. We don't do our best for ourselves. We do it for God. So, you know, because God made us, and, you know, we don't want him thinking he wasted his time, you know, making a whole bunch of devil worshiping people. You know what I mean? But think about that. Yeah. That's insane. Like, that's why he killed off all them people the other time during the flood. And then, and, you know, what if one day he decides to change his, even though he made a promise, but he can always change his mind and destroy the earth because everybody's all full of shenanigans. You know what I mean? It's
because God keeps his word, and he promised he wouldn't destroy the world again, so he doesn't change.
Yeah, but he gave up his son. This is the thing that scares me. He gave up his only son, made him go, because man, that stuff, I don't want to say gives me nightmares, but man, when I go to sleep, I can't stop thinking about stuff like that. Like, I see it in my head. You know what I mean? Like, what he had to have gone through just to, you know, just for us. You know what I mean? It's like, man, why would he do that? You know, and the least we can do is show God some respect. You know what I mean? There's nothing shameful about doing stuff like that. But for a lot of people, for a lot of supremacists, they feel like, oh, I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? Because there was this flood, or there was this hurricane, there was this or that. And you know, a lot of people have a lot of reasons why they don't want to get dressed up or show God respect because they're angry. But then again, that's what the preachers are for. You know, to tell, hey, look, this is a Romans thing. This has nothing to do with God. Mm-hmm. You know, we should always show God our best, and you know, because he gave us life. Because, you know, and I always freak out on this too. Another thing to freak out about. how fast does this planet actually move? You know what I mean? When you really think about it, it moves about 65,000 miles per hour in a perfect orbit around the sun. Can you imagine if we're just off by a little bit? We
Yeah, I've
would
always
either
thought of
freeze
that.
to death or boil to death, like a crab.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And which is funny because blacks suffer from crab mentality. But the thing is, this whole thing just blows me away.
Yeah.
You know, but it does. It just blows me away. Everything just blows me away. And so that's why, like, I'm thankful. You know, and I always want to give my best now. It's not for myself, not for the family, but it's for God because he deserves it.
Mhm.
He deserves all the glory because he made us and he made this universe in such a way that it could never be duplicated. Never. Nobody could ever do this again. All of the smartest people on the planet could never do what God did. Never could be recreated, not in a lab, not anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. We are moving so fast, but yet we don't float off into outer space. Or the sun doesn't suck us up in a black hole that's going to kill us all one day.
Black holes don't exist.
Yeah, I know. That's the whole thing. It's crazy. Or our understanding of a quote unquote black hole, it's so wrong. It's not even funny. It's not even funny. But on that note, yeah, but you gotta do it again. Anyway, sorry about that.
Oh, she's crying again.
Yeah, I know.
Having a baby. But yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in and listening. I don't know where he's running off to.
Yeah, no. But don't worry. I'm back. Anyway, so long story short, because I know our time is getting near, but yeah, you know what? I don't think you gave an opening statement.
No, it wasn't an opening statement. It was just I just wanted to see where you were, but then you know how we are. It naturally flows into other things. I really just wanted to talk about that. And I guess I'll reveal it for everybody at the end here. What kind of spurred all this off was just the aspect of cause and effect. So for those of you who don't know, I like sell stuff on the phone. And I was just saying that, like, it's just an observation that I've made that with people in minority communities, in the Black community, right? Now, the type of sales I do, I'm selling like thousands of dollars worth of stuff. So you can't just, it's not an everyday impulsive buy. You got to have money to do what I'm proposing here. I won't go into too much detail, but I've noticed that every time you encounter, somebody who is just kind of like, I'll be honest, it's usually like a Black person, right? And if they're like, they don't have their life together or they're broke or whatnot, the answer is usually the same. But if that individual is married and has kids, for some reason, if they're Black, they all have money. For some reason, even if they work modest jobs, they have money. Like they and a lot of it relative to what they earn. For some reason, I don't know why that is, but I actually do know why that is. But what I mean is, it's interesting how in the perfect natural order of things, it's like God intended for you to not cohabitate, to not have a single parent household, to not just get knocked up without getting married, right? To actually work together and build a family. And believe it or not, when your families are stable, you got a whole lot of a better shot at not just being happy, but financially secure as well. So I just wanted to, that's kind of what stirred this whole thing. But
yeah, no, but that is so correct, man. That is so correct. That's not even funny. Oh man. But we laugh because
because it's fitting, and human beings laugh, number one, because of realities that are pointed out, right? And irony. That's the funny thing. Is like you try so hard to stunt. Everybody wants to be an NBA player or a rapper, and it's like, dude, just go to church, like don't have sex before you're married, get married and have kids and have a regular job, and you will have more abundance in your life than you'll know what to do with. It's just how we were made.
But but that's the funny thing. It's like in the Black culture, especially with Black communities, sex is like the thing to do. It's just what everybody does. Because why? they got nothing else. It's kind of like, like why do Mexicans have so many kids? Because they can't afford to go out to eat. so they just have babies. They stay home, have like those little family barbecues, and then they have sex, and then that's it. That's what their lives are. And but it's like that with blacks, but there's no family. They just do it because there's nothing else. That's their reward, for everything. It's just I don't. Have you ever kissed the band?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
have you ever heard of Kiss?
Yeah.
So if you ever listen to Gene Simmons speak, that's like what it's like to be black. Because that's the only motivation they have. They don't care about houses or cars or anything. They don't. Because they have no idea how nice it is to have a family and a regular life. You know what I mean? Because there's like a lot of pressure to be good at sex or whatever. When you let all that crap go and just become a normal human being, not like an animal, your life is that much better. And that's why those black dudes, that even if they're not rich, they could afford, no debt, no, good family. They could afford things because they're not throwing their money away on stupidity. You could have a nice dinner without going to an expensive steakhouse like Harris. Like in San Francisco, there's a few.
Mm-hmm.
Harris is one of them. Why spend $300 on a little 4-ounce piece of filet mignon just to get laid, when you could probably spend the same amount of money and feed a whole boatload of people? You know what I mean? And have a really good party and make it about your community and whatever. You know what I mean? See, blacks don't think that way.
Yeah,
we do something totally different, which is crazy. But once you accept Christ, then you're like any other normal Christian person and just have, enjoy your life, enjoy family, and enjoy how your family grows, and you could do things for your family. You know what I mean? So when somebody calls and say, "Hey, I want to pitch you something," say, "Hey, how is this going to affect my family?" Well, I'm sold. Here you go. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly how it happens. They're like, and then I always tell them, talk to your wife about it. See if she's on board. And then when they're both on board, dude, power couple. Like they make it happen. They make it happen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here's my credit card. It's no big deal. It's just like, all right. Anyways, we got to wrap this up. Any quick final thoughts before I close off?
No. Just we should do an episode on like serious dating tips and things like that, because people need to learn. But that was good. I liked today's show. So
good. Well, thank you guys for listening to the American Made and Paid Show, and we will see you tomorrow, and we'll talk more about Amber Geiger tomorrow.
Yeah. I want to do that tomorrow because that's very interesting.
All right,
cool.